You don't have a sleep problem. You have a pre-sleep habit problem. That might sting a little, but stay with me. The nighttime anxiety you feel, the tossing and turning, the restless mind that refuses to slow down, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. Something is feeding it, and chances are you're doing it every single night without realizing it. Right before bed, you tell yourself you're relaxing. But what's really happening? Digital consumption, scrolling through negativity, replaying past mistakes, late-night worrying. You lie there with a heavy heart, feeding fear, focusing on problems, ignoring God's presence, and then wonder why your sleep feels like spiritual warfare at night. Your body is exhausted, but your mind is loud with mental noise and inner turmoil. Here's the truth most people never hear. Divine rest is intentional. Unshakable peace doesn't just fall on you. It flows when you practice surrendering to God, casting your cares, and choosing biblical meditation instead of mental chaos. When you stop feeding the anxiety and start choosing nighttime prayers, something shifts. You move from troubled sleep to healing sleep. You go from restless to safe in His arms, and you finally wake up refreshed. Stop going to bed with a flooded mind. You can't expect a quiet soul if you go to bed overstimulated. The moment you lie down after intense digital consumption, your brain doesn't switch off. It keeps scrolling through negativity long after the screen goes dark. That mental noise becomes a restless mind, and suddenly you're tossing and turning. What felt like harmless entertainment quietly turns into nighttime anxiety. And just like that, the cycle begins again. Think about what usually fills your last 30 minutes. News headlines designed to trigger fear. Social media arguments, comparing your life to someone else's highlight reel. That's not winding down. That's feeding fear before bed. Try something radically different for 7 nights. Replace the scroll with biblical meditation, read Psalm 23 slowly, or listen to calming worship music. Notice how spiritual alignment begins to soften the inner turmoil. When you choose nighttime prayers instead of late-night worrying, something powerful shifts inside you. Instead of replaying past mistakes, you start casting your cares. Instead of focusing on problems, you practice surrendering to God. That's how divine rest begins, not with silence around you, but with peace within you. And once you realize how much your evening inputs shape your troubled sleep, you'll start to wonder what else you've been allowing into your nights without noticing. Stop replaying the day like a courtroom trial. The moment the lights go out, your mind puts you on trial. You replay conversations, mistakes, awkward moments, replaying past mistakes as if a different ending might suddenly appear. That late-night worrying feels productive, but it's just feeding fear. Your body is in bed, yet your spirit is tangled in inner turmoil. That's how an ordinary night quietly turns into spiritual warfare at night. You tell yourself you're processing, but most nights you're simply focusing on problems without solutions. The restless mind builds arguments, defenses, imaginary confrontations. It's draining. Instead, try this. Before bed, write down 3 things that went right today, even small ones. Then practice casting your cares in prayer, whispering, "I release this into your hands," and feel what shifts inside you. And here's something sacred. When truth resonates, you don't debate it. Your soul simply recognizes it. There's no resistance, no overthinking, just a calm knowing. If something in you is quietly saying, "This is true," then honor that moment. Comment, "So it is," as a declaration of spiritual alignment. And if this message feels aligned with your path toward unshakable peace and divine rest, gently like the video and subscribe, not out of obligation, but as a way of staying connected to a space where your spirit can keep growing, where a quiet soul is nurtured, and where you learn to sleep in security instead of carrying a heavy heart into the night. Stop going to bed in silent conflict. One of the most underestimated causes of nighttime anxiety is unresolved tension. You may not be arguing out loud, but inside, you're still engaging in conflict. Maybe it's a text you didn't answer. Maybe it's resentment. Maybe it's something you wish you had said. That hidden friction becomes mental noise, and your restless mind carries it straight into troubled sleep. When you lie down with unspoken frustration, your body rests, but your spirit stays alert. That's why spiritual warfare at night often feels so intense. Your inner turmoil hasn't been released. Instead of focusing on problems, try initiating peace before bed. Send the message. Forgive in prayer. Say, "I choose release." Practice nighttime prayers that center on surrendering to God rather than defending your position. You don't need to win every argument before midnight. You need a quiet soul. When you stop feeding fear and start casting your cares, something shifts internally. You begin sleeping in security, safe in His arms, even if everything around you isn't perfect. That's how divine rest becomes real. And once you experience even one night of healing sleep and wake up, refreshed with restored energy, you'll realize peace before bed isn't weakness, it's power. Peace at night isn't random, it's not luck, it's not personality, it's preparation. When you go to bed after digital consumption, scrolling through negativity, replaying past mistakes, and late-night worrying, you're not inviting divine rest. You're feeding a restless mind. And that mental noise quietly turns into nighttime anxiety, tossing and turning, and troubled sleep. But the opposite is just as real. When you choose surrendering to God instead of focusing on problems, something shifts internally. When you practice casting your cares, engaging in nighttime prayers, and allowing biblical meditation to quiet your inner turmoil, you create space for a quiet soul. That's how spiritual warfare at night loses its grip. That's how you begin sleeping in security, safe in His arms. Unshakable peace grows in small, intentional decisions. Turning the phone off earlier, refusing to engage in conflict before bed, releasing the heavy heart instead of feeding fear. These aren't dramatic changes, but they break the cycle of insomnia and open the door to healing sleep. And when that peace that surpasses understanding settles over you, you wake up refreshed with restored energy. Tonight, choose peace on purpose. Guard your final thoughts. Align your spirit. Let your last act of the day be trust, not tension. Divine rest is waiting, and it begins the moment you decide that your night will no longer belong to anxiety, but to grace.